I again sat down on the lounge and was about to give up. Sitting down caused me to look at the wall from a different angle. My eyes were drawn to the centerpiece of trim. The length of the room was adorned with brass flowers every couple of feet. They were not bright or polished, but dark and dull with age. I noticed that one fell just about 6 inches to the right of the door. I walked up and looked at it. It looked like all the others. I pressed it, and it pushed in easily. There was an audible click, and all of a sudden, the hidden door swung inward a few inches. I gently pushed the door open. Surprisingly, it opened with ease. I looked over my shoulder, half expecting to find someone watching me. Satisfied no one was there, I took a step into the dark room. For as warm and inviting as the parlor was, this room was the opposite. The temperature dropped what felt like 20 degrees. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the darkness, with just the parlor light coming in. I grabbed my flashlight to get a better look. While the room was far from an unfinished storage area, it was still stark and cold. It was a small rectangular room. The floor was covered in alternating black and white marble tiles. There were 2 chairs on either side of a small desk. The walls were black except for a mirror that hung on the one side. The ceiling was black. Aside from the white tiles on the floor, there was just darkness and a feeling of emptiness. The black walls and ceiling gave the illusion of empty space, like there were no walls and ceiling, like the room just went on indefinitely. The desk and chairs looked like they were just floating there in space. On the far wall there was a door. As I walked towards it, I could hear my footsteps echo in the empty room. The door was unlike any other in the house. It was painted black, and instead of the massive wooden doors everywhere else in the house, this one was metal. There were rows of rivets along the edges that made it look more like a door to a battleship than something you would find in a house. I turned the handle and found it to be locked. As I examined the door with my flashlight, I realized there was something drawn on it. It was hard to see against the black background, but there was what appeared to be a circle with a diagonal line through it. It was crudely drawn and so faint. It looked as though it was painted hastily. There were drip lines at the bottom edges of it. I then realized how to open the door. Surely it was the door which could be opened with the other key I'd been given. I immediately pulled my phone out of my pocket. I wanted to tell David about it immediately. The bright screen of the phone briefly blinded me. A moment later, I tried to call David. The call would not go through. There was absolutely no service. I put the phone back in my pocket and sat down in one of the chairs in the room. On top of the desk, there was an array of black and red candles, all about half burned, leaving long ribbons of melted wax on their sides. I opened the drawer on the desk and saw an ancient-looking book. I grabbed the book to examine it. It was older than any book I'd ever seen. The cover was an aged tan leather, but so old and brittle it gave the impression of an old plastic that would shatter if you put any pressure on it. I kept myself from opening it because I was afraid the whole thing would disintegrate in my hands. There was a crude black handwriting on the cover. It read, Muchner Handbuch die Nekromantie. Afraid of opening it and equally afraid of removing it, I used my phone to take a photo of the cover. The flash of the camera blinded me for a minute, and I gently put the book back in the drawer. I walked back into the warmer parlor. After only a few steps into the parlor, I started to feel dizzy. My feet became increasingly heavy. The muscles in my legs tensed and strained at every step. I made it as far as the chaise where I sat down. My hands stretched to rub my legs and try to coax them back into feeling, but it was no use. As I lay there, the room appeared to darken. The light from my lantern faded. I shut my eyes tightly and shook my head, assuming that when I opened them again everything would be back to normal. It wasn't.